leadership presence is, and you'll see this coming up, who has it, and how you can benefit from it. We're going to also do a personal assessment. You're going to do an individual assessment of where your leadership presence skills are right now, and look at some of the latest research on 2 important components of leadership presence. So that's all in that first section of leadership presence fundamentals.
Okay, great.
Then we're going to look at being more present for others, not just physically present, but mentally engaged and present. Being more connected through listening and empathy. Being more expressive. And by the way, this is the presentation skills stuff is in the being expressive. So being expressive, like how do we show up visually, vocally, and verbally? And how can we be, when we need to be, even more inspirational by knowing our values and sharing them through story and using stories to impact change or impact behavior or mood within your organization. So this is like their timeline. Now it follows well the handout. Do you have the handout in front of you? I think it's going to be easier for me to
I have. Let's have a look. Leadership presence. Then today you will learn.
So on pages, I have it printed, so I think it's easier for me to do it that way, if that's okay, like, so I'm not toggling back and forth. But being, like, this overview is on page 3 in the handout, and the page before that just simply defines what we mean by being more connected, more expressive. And it's, you know, for you, you'll have that background, but as they take the handouts away, they'll have that background. Because they may make sense when they're there, but then they're like, well, what do they mean by being more expressive? And it's there for them.
That's good, terrific.
So I kind of went through those sections fast. Let me know, do you want me to repeat it, or is there a question on anything in the timeline, because it was kind of quick?
No, but what I'll do is I'll go through it again later, and then I can have questions, so I can come back to if there's a problem. But it's all stuff that I'm busy with myself and interested in myself, so you're not yet saying anything that's, I'm excited actually, because like, oh yay, I can't wait to get into this. It's nothing
you haven't seen or been aware of.
And I think about these things myself with that thing of, you know, how do you be present, and what does it look like, and like the first slide, how do you teach people the behaviour of having a stronger presence? So I've actually played with that a few times in trainings a few years ago actually. So it'd be good to get back into it. So far so good.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, so then we go into really the first section under Leadership Presence Fundamentals. From a handout standpoint, that's on page 4.
Got it,
and so there's 3 questions there. What is leadership presence? And a part of that is what are traits and characteristics that you associate with leadership presence? The second question is who has leadership presence? And then the third question is how would enhancing your leadership presence affect and benefit those around you? Is that what you have as well? I just want to make sure. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, so what I usually do, let's say there's 10 or 15 or 20 people there, I'll, at their tables, so like groups of 5 or 6, have them discuss this. So I give them 10 minutes, discuss these 3 questions. Occasionally I have very small groups, like 5 people, and then I either have them at one table discuss it, or we discuss it all together, which is another option. So I don't know your group size, you know, it's probably 10 or less. You have some choices. You could, let's say it's 10, you could break them into 2 groups, and just that way they're getting to know each other more and start talking, or you can discuss it all together as a group. Totally up to you.
Yes, I'll feel the group, and of course, as you say, it depends on how big it is. Good. But anyway, the first thing is get to discuss that, and then pull out, okay, what are the key points the group thinks?
Exactly. And so at that point, we go back to the slide, and I say, so what is leadership presence, and what traits and characteristics did you associate with it? Because now they've answered it, and you know, as groups, and so we get to hear their perspective, and we talk about that. From there, you can take out any of these slides, by the way, if it doesn't resonate with you. It's flexible. I just want you to know that. But I share a quote from the Ariel Group, which is based in Boston, that I really like, that leadership presence is the ability to connect authentically with others. That it needs to come from an authentic place. Like certain people have a more quiet, gentle charisma, and some people have much louder, more forceful charisma, and they're both okay, but it needs to be authentic to who they are.
Great, that's great. Yep, exactly. Because sometimes I have, introverts will say, yeah, but I'm not like that, and I was like, no, exactly. And it's not about being, a showman. It's not about that. It's the authentic something that we'll talk about.
The it factor, the authentic it factor, exactly, because introverts always feel like they are never perceived with leadership presence, which isn't true.
No, not at all. No. Yeah, that's good. This is good. This is exciting, actually. Yay.
Good. So, sometimes that quote, like authenticity, comes up in the group, and then it's like a perfect time to transition to this. Other times I let the discussion go on for a while, and I'll say, one thing that hasn't come up is also authenticity. So, you'll figure out how to transition that. I sometimes hide this next slide. I haven't been using it as much, but it's another option. In the classes in the U.S., we give them mini books, and you'll need to confirm with Heather, who I know is the account manager on this. Are they getting the mini books? And the mini books, there's a leadership presence one that Marjorie and I co-authored that's like leadership presence, the influential, intangible. Sometimes we ship the mini books, sometimes it's digital. Like if it's international, maybe it'll be digital. But that's where that quote came from. So the book is a leadership presence, the influential, intangible. Like it's hard to define, but it's something that helps us. Leadership presence, the people that have that are really able to influence in their organizations and often in their personal lives. They have the ability to do that. But sometimes it's hard to define, like how do they get people to get on board on these projects, to agree on this, to get motivated, to buy in, to evolve their thinking? It's like, whoa, this is so powerful. But I don't always use that quote because I just don't think it needs both quotes, but I'll just say it's there for you.
One or the other,
Right. And then, let's say they've used, a lot of times people won't come back with their own definitions, but they do come back with traits and characteristics. So they'll say, knowledgeable, credible, trustworthy, all of these things. And so I have a slide that builds out that has a lot of them. If they've used all of them, just say, and you have the slide come up, I'll show you the slide in a second, just say that absolutely aligns with the feedback we hear about leadership presence, that we perceive leadership presence as a combination of these traits. Or if, let's say they missed a few of them and say, yes, absolutely, they're knowledgeable, they're charismatic, let's look at a few other things that we often hear about people that have strong leadership presence. And either way, it builds like this. Yeah. And again, you can, so sometimes I do it where the how do you want to come across, that headline works. Again, you'll be able to change that if you want to say traits and characteristics of leadership presence or what is leadership presence with a question mark, you can tweak that. But these are some of the terms that we hear a lot, authentic, engaging, et cetera. Okay. All right, so that answered that first question. Now we're going to the second question. Who do you think hasn't? Oh, you know what? This is not the latest. All right, wait a minute. I want to show you. I asked Justin to upload the latest, but there's a deck that's more current than this that Janice and I did. Let me go to share for a second. My screen. Sorry, we're going to take you off this for a second because I want to see if maybe I have a shortcut to it right here. If not, I'll go into on my desktop. And I'll have him send this to you. It's not, the slides aren't totally different. There's just a few tweaks that is worth showing you. All right, where's my leadership presence file?
Can never find it when you need it.
Never find it. Let's do it this way. I thought it was like easy, but okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah, this is it. All right. There's something missing. All right. Again, that's the same. That's the same. She added this one about standing out. If you like that slide.
That one, yeah, standing out. Yeah.
Okay. All of this is the same. Then she added these C's as part of the before she gets into the aerial group quote, which is it's a combination of confidence, composure, credibility, connection, charisma. I kind of like it, so I kept in what.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah. And then you still see the aerial group. Okay, this is where I wanted to get to. So who do you think has leadership presence was the slide that you saw before, but then we added, what is it about them specifically that gives them that presence? Because in the past, people might name drop, but they didn't really do that critical thinking of, well, why? Why do I perceive them that way? What is it about them specifically? So I thought adding this would be helpful.
Good. Yeah, exactly, because that's what we're trying to pull out. What is that thing? Because if they can identify it, then they can start developing it in themselves. Yeah.
Exactly. And then it combines to that third question on page 4, which is how would enhancing your leadership presence affect and benefit those around you? And by the way, that question has changed over the years. It used to be help you in your career, but we got feedback that people felt that it was too self-serving. That really it's about how does this help your team get more resources or get more positive visibility or get more customers or help market share. It does help you, but it actually can help with a lot of other things. So it's thinking bigger, and I thought that was good feedback for us, so we shifted it. So those are the 3 questions on page 4. You have a good discussion, and then we transition them to how do we so let's see how your leadership presence is, how you're doing with leadership presence. We're going to jump past it. That's this.
Yeah.
Now I'm just going to blank my screen for a second because we don't use slides in this section. So if you have the handout in front of you on page 5, there's a leadership presence assessment. So you know the technique of blanking out the screen?
No, tell me.
Okay, yeah, so I want you to know this because I want you to teach it in presentation skills as well.
Yes.
So it's very important for us, we believe, that your slides aren't up there for 8 hours. It's mind-numbing for the audience. So when I'm introducing the class, it's okay if the title slide is up when people are coming into the room, figuring out in the right space, and you're greeting them. But as soon as you start the class, we teach to blank the slide out, and you really connect with the audience. We do that during Q&A unless there's a question on the slide, and I'll do it throughout the session when I'm not using slides. So in this section on leadership presence assessment. So if you're using an English version of PowerPoint, you do that by hitting the letter B for black in English. So you just if you're in the view show, the full screen mode, I was here, not if you're in slide sorter, but if you're in that full screen, if you hit B for black, it'll blank it out, and you hit B again, it brings it back, which is pretty cool.
I should know all this stuff. This is, I just haven't used it for so long. Oh God, B and then hit B again. Yep.
And then you hit B again. Exactly. But in German, I think it would be S for Schwartz. In Mandarin, H for hey. I presented in Mexico 2 years ago. It was N for negro. So it's the word black in the language that you're using for PowerPoint, basically.
Okay, so that's English, and then I'll put Z for Dutch.
So I was going to ask you what it is. So it's Z.
Well, it's black is zwart. Z-W-A-A-R-T, I think you spell it.
So it's the same as German, the Schwartz. It sounds the same,
right?
Yeah,
it would be. It's very close Dutch and German. Okay. And Z. Cool.
Does it work?
If they're using the screen, the keyboard that's in their language, yeah.
Yeah, they're using keyboard. Now, if they use a remote, like I often suggest that people use, you know, like a Kensington or Logitech remote so that they can walk around the room and they have more flexibility. They would want to get a remote where you can blank it out. And most remotes now blank it out. It's a very common feature.
Right.
And then you're not tethered to the keyboard, just as an option.
That's a good idea, actually.
So when you say you haven't been using PowerPoint in a while, have you been using Prezi, or like are you using
No, I've been using PowerPoint, but I teach at school at actually university, and we have a PowerPoint and all this stuff. It doesn't always work that well, but these little tricks I should know and be using, and I've got sloppy. That's basically all. Yeah, no, you PowerPoint. Yeah, no,
not at all. I find almost no presenters know this. I got to tell you, professional speakers, very few. Like, I became a zealot for this like 10 years ago, and I've been trying to teach it all over, but very few people know, and I'm so excited you'll be able to model this for your students and bring this to Europe.
Yeah, and Shirley was great. The Speakers Association in Singapore was sensational, and I went to a few talks and conferences where they just had all these great tips and tricks of all like this, and of course I wrote them down and then I forgot all about them. So I'm sitting here feeling embarrassed. I should be, but this is great. Polishing the old sword again. So that's good.
All right. Well, so the screen's blank, and we have this assessment on page 5. And so it's a pretty simple one-page assessment. Basically, they're self-assessing, and the directions are at top where it says circle at least 5 strengths. So they could circle 10 strengths if they want, but at least 5, because people have such a hard time saying anything positive about themselves, right? We tend to go negative. So it's really important that they get a sense of what they're doing well with this. And then 3 areas of opportunity, not more than 3, because that's where we can like, oh, I do all of these poorly. No, they don't. So what are like 3 priorities? So we give them a few minutes to read this and reflect. And then I give them, sometimes I write this on a flip chart, sometimes I just verbally give them the directions, but basically they're going to choose one of the 3 opportunities. So they choose one of them. So let's say fidgety and distracted movement, weak first impression, and infobesity. They circled those 3. So they get to circle, they get to choose one of the 3 that they're going to ask for advice on. And we're then going to have them stand up and partner. I'll often say partner with someone not at your table if possible, just so they're standing up, they're moving, they're getting to know other people in the room, getting different perspectives. And that they share, so they say, you know, I think I'm really fidgety and distracting at meetings. I shift a lot in my seat and, you know, tap my foot a lot. Sometimes I chew gum. I play with my phone. I know I need to stop, but it's just hard for me to sit that long in a meeting. Like, let's say they say that. So, by the way, that's what would happen. Like, if you and I are partnered up, and I said, I have to give you background. Like, I can't just say I'm fidgety. I would say, well, at meetings, and here's specifically what I do. And so if the partner is going to give advice, they need to diagnose before they prescribe. So they got to get some of that. So like, well, does it happen at certain meetings but not others? Do you think it's coming from nervousness, or it's just like hard to sit for that long? Like they're trying to diagnose. And then based on that, they're going to use all those years of experience that they have to give them some suggestions of what they should do, what could help them. And then they're going to flip and repeat. So if you and I partnered up and I say, here's my issue, and you ask me some questions, and I give you that background, you give me suggestions, then after about 5 minutes, we're going to flip, and you share with me something that you're working on, and I give you advice. The same thing. Sometimes we do this twice, meaning I have them go to a different partner then, because sometimes, as Marjorie will say, sometimes you have a dub who's a partner. Like, they're just not very helpful. It wasn't great. So sometimes you go there. Now, you can give them options. They can use the same opportunity and get someone else's perspective, or they can choose one of the other 2 opportunities that they had originally circled.
Right. Good. I was writing out.
Then we debrief as a group. We'll talk about this and see what questions they have. Like, they might say, well, what do you do if you tend to ramble? Like, I'd love to know, you know, they might not want to know your perspective on things. And I want to tell you one additional thing that you can do with this, either here or later in the class. If this is a group of people who knows each other, and that's something both you and I need to find out, because I'm doing the American programs of this at the end of the month, so I haven't had the client call yet, but we need to find out if this is like an impact group that works together or knows each other well. If they are, then you could do this right here, which is basically after they do this opportunity exercise and you do a brief debrief, that when they're sitting at their tables, you could say, okay, so we focus on opportunities, and a lot of times that's what we all focus on. We also want to think about leveraging our strengths, and we're not maybe too close to ourselves to have perspective of our strengths. So let's hear from our colleagues. What I'd like you to do, let's say there's 5 people at the table, is you're going to share one strength for each person at your table. So if Beth is first, Beth is going to get to hear a strength from the other 4 people at her table, what they think of her. So from this list, like Beth, I really love how you tailor your message to the audience, and here's an example of that. Or I love how you're a great storyteller. You just always have a great story to enhance what you're saying. Like everyone will say something different about the person, but if they feel so great, and it also helps them figure out what strengths to leverage, because sometimes we don't see it in ourselves.
Great. Feedback. That's her strength. That's lovely. Yeah, what a lovely thing. So if they do know each other well and they're all from the same department or whatever, that's great.
Yeah, you can do it here. Now, let's say they don't know each other. You can come back to this later in the program. When we get there, we can look at some places to do that, because now they've had like most of the day to work together. So you would say, okay, do you remember the assessment we did earlier in the day where we got help from each other with our opportunities? Well, you've had a chance to work and partner together all day. You've also had a chance now to see a lot of strengths, and then do that same exercise later.
Fantastic. Like it. Yeah. Yeah. Great. That's good. I'm writing it down. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So then the last part of the leadership presence fundamentals, so that first like box where it was like leadership presence fundamentals, is coming up, and that's on page 6 in the manual, and that's about how people perceive us. Now this doesn't. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, sorry, I'm getting what is my screen doing? It's scrolling. Hang on, I've got it too big, I think. Hang on, let me go down. Yes, that's not. Yeah, I've got it in front of me.
Oh, you have it. Look, there's a matrix on the page.
Yep. Okay,
so really this visually right now doesn't seem to track with the handout, but it'll come together. Again, you could, basically we're saying, how do people perceive us? Well, so I usually say it verbally. How do they perceive us? It's also on the top of page 6. Well, there's 2 critical variables of leadership presence that really impact how people perceive us. And so now we're at the top of page 6, as you can see. The 2 critical variables are warmth and confidence. So why don't you, and this is, I'm directing the participants, why don't you write it down? Warmth and confidence, so I'm having them write it down here, account for about 80%. So the third fill in the blank is 80%.
Okay, yeah.
And then they can see the rest of our overall evaluation of people and shape our emotions, our behaviors to them. So basically how we size up people, how we judge them, and how they judge us. It has a lot to do with these qualities of warmth and confidence. By the way, you can see this research was done by Dr. Amy Cuddy, who at the time was a social psychologist with Harvard's Business School. So that's where the study is from. Okay, so let's see what we mean by warmth and confidence, and we're using her language. When you think of the word warm, like a person who is warm, what do you think of? And I'm actually going to ask you, Jacinta, what do you think of when you think of someone in your life who's warm?
They're approachable. I feel safe with them.
Great.
Yeah.
So they're approachable. You feel safe with them. You really feel like they're genuine. It sounds like you trust them.
Yeah, I trust them. I feel like I can be myself and open. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. So people in our life that we see as warm, we feel like we have this trust with. They're open. They're not judging us. They have our back in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You want to surround ourselves with friends like this and hopefully work with people like this, yet at work it's not enough. We need warmth. We also want people to work with people who show competence. Now, people have also, Amy Cuddy, Dr. Cuddy used the word competence. Others have switched that term to strength. When you think of competence, someone who's competent or someone who's strong, what do you think of?
Because I was okay with competent.
And you can keep it as competent. Sometimes I'll just add, there's also the strength component, but let's say you keep it at competent. That's fine either way. What do you think of when someone's competent?
Because you said, so at work though, we need to be around people that are competent, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I want my boss or my leader to know what he or she's talking about. Again, there's that trusting. I can trust that they have the ability to be in the position they're in, and I want to know that they're competent and capable of running our department properly, because then we all feel safe and we feel we can trust each other. You feel, you know, it's going to go well. We're going to be successful in what we're doing because that person's got a handle on it.
Yeah, because like quality-wise, they might be knowledgeable. They can achieve results. They can make decisions. They have the ability to influence others. They follow through. Say they're going to do something and follow through on it. There's a lot of qualities there and competence in what you're defining. So you like pull it out of the audience like that, and it's also about power, which is sometimes why people have changed the word to strength. It's about power. It could be positional power. It could be the ability to influence even without authority. That's part of this. So
yeah, because that's where I'm struggling a little bit with the word strength. I'm thinking it's German, so they won't be as sensitive, I don't think, as say Americans might be to some of this. Because it is power, and I want because we've got someone where I currently work, and she is supposed to be our leader. It's a great situation of this. She has all the knowledge, but she doesn't actually have the competency to be a manager, and it is causing huge stress and overwork and incompetence in running projects and meetings, even everything, and it's also unnecessary but she doesn't have this presence, and people don't sit up straight and get on with meetings. They all float around, and there's no snap, move, you know. And the power thing, I think power doesn't have to be abusive power. Power can be strong. Someone who's strong, like you say, can influence. So, yeah.
I love that. I would bring up that example. That's perfect. It's like she's knowledgeable. So on one hand, you would think, well, that she's competent, but she doesn't have the managerial or leadership skills.
No.
So the group, you know, the meetings are inefficient. They're swirling on conversation, not getting to decisions. Very frustrating for people.
Extremely, and has big impact, and to the point then you get this thing of people start making excuses and are not turning up to these important meetings, and then those of us who turn up get annoyed. So you can imagine what happens in a group, and it all comes from this wonderful, lovely, adorable woman who just doesn't have these kind of skills. And again, when she walks in a room, so I'm thinking now, sorry, she walks in a room, she doesn't command the space. So you don't go, right, now now the meeting's about to start. You wouldn't, you know, she's a shadow.
That's
and it
a great example.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because, and what's interesting for me coming from corporate and now being in the school system, we had a meeting recently and I said to actually I'm line manager, I said, you know, her name's Shalkia, I said, Shalkia, sit in that place there. Everyone needs to know you're in charge, and so she's starting to do a few things. I've pushed her because I got so frustrated at these women not being strong and not owning the executive presence. And she did it, and the meeting went really well and was on time, and it was wonderful. And it's
These are great stories to thread throughout the session. This is exactly because as soon as you start sharing that, everyone in the room is going to think of the people on their teams that they've worked with, that they've been in those situations with. They're going to completely relate. So this is great.
Yeah.
What you can also think about here, because again, this is about how people perceive us, is that what we're basically saying is that we're always asking ourselves, you know, can I trust this person? Are they on my side? Like, even I'll go into, and I know in America right now it's really dodgy to go into politics, but I'll be very careful with it. But say, like, let's say you're thinking about who to vote for. You know, is this person on my side? Do they see the world like I do? Do they have positive intentions towards me? Those are all warmth factors. Do they have the power to carry those intentions out is the competency.
That's exactly, and do they have the power, and it's kind of like the authority they have the authority sort of thing, but and do they have the strength of character and courage to carry it out?
Yes, yes.
Sometimes, you know, you really need to carry the thing for your team or whatever, and you see that sometimes, you know, people going, yeah, and then everyone's dodging the bullet sort of thing. It's sort of, I like that. That trust word keeps coming up in both situations with the warm and caring. It comes up again. So when I trust you've got my back and you're competent, and you've got the skills, and I see that demonstrated. And when you walk into a room, you don't need to command, or, you know, you don't need to, people just respond to you because you've got this thing that we're teaching you,
So all of these examples in this discussion is really important because I think this can be very academic or abstract if we're not careful. Like when I put this course together a few years ago, I was concerned about that here. I find it like so interesting, but like for the audience, they have to see how it's not just theoretically interesting or the study showed this. They have to see like, well, what does that mean for me? And how do I apply that? And so
I'll probably relate to some of the little stories,
Exactly. So we show them this matrix that is on page 6, which like the sweet spot where we all want to be is, in this case, the upper left quadrant. We all want to be perceived as warm and confident. It elicits feelings of admiration, cooperation, helpfulness, which you need in these collaborative matrix companies, right? All these companies are all cross-functional and structured to be collaborative. Well, you've got to have great relationships. You just can't overpower people with strengths if you want to get things done. And I don't think anyone in our classes typically is in that lower right in the cold incompetent, which, you know, it's like contempt, neglect. But I think we can all float in the other 3, which is, you know, the sometimes cold incompetent, which is, you know, we're not as warm, we're not as interested in others, we're not patient enough to bring people along, and if we're powerful in the company, it can lead to resentment or envy. Or the warm incompetent, which is like someone you like, is a good person, but they just get it wrong again and again and again. Like, you know, the examples that you could come up with, I have my own, but that elicits feelings of pity. It's like, I'm rooting for this person, and they just can't get it together.
But the other thing is you feel a bit guilty and a bit disloyal because I really like this woman as a person and she's got great ideas and stuff, but she just doesn't have this. And I feel guilty every time I'm going mad to a colleague about her because I like her as a person, but so it's the pity, but you feel bad about sort of trashing her, you know. And then this cold and confident, I'm thinking about people that just, they don't have that warmth, and they've got people. Have you got any examples? Any funny stories?
Well, I'll tell you an example I use, and it may just not that you can borrow it, but it also may just trigger something for you. I tell them an example of someone who used to work with Brody, and I've changed his name to Tim for the story. That was not his name. And he was a really nice guy, and, you know, he was collaborative and would say the right thing. But after working together for a while, I realized, like, his version of collaborative was, like, coming to meetings and just echoing what everyone else is saying. He didn't really do any of the work in between the meetings. And it was just like a lot of hot air. Like, he was just repeating what everyone was saying all the time without doing any critical thinking himself. And after a year or so, we parted ways. And then last year, Andrea and I were at a conference, and he was actually a panelist. and he came up to, so this is, by the way, I wouldn't say this to them, but I'm telling you it's a true story. Like, I always tell stories that are true. Sometimes they're like embellished a little bit just for more impact, but they're all true. Okay, so he comes up to us, and he said, you know, I'm worried we're not going to get enough questions and we're just going to hear crickets. So I wrote, you know, that might be a very American expression. We'll say you hear crickets.
I love that expression. It's great.
Okay. So I wrote down 3 questions that the audience might have. You know, if you don't hear any questions, can you ask me? And I was really impressed. I was like, wow, although I've always thought of him as warm and incompetent, he's like inching over to that orange space on the matrix. Like, that's a really smart thing to do, to think ahead, anticipate what questions, write it down, and then ask someone to ask this question if no one else does. So the moderator asks her questions. She opens it up a little later to the whole group, and silence. There's no questions. So Andrea raises her hand, and she asked him one of his 3 questions.
Yeah.
He couldn't answer his own question.
Oh, no. So
and I realized what he did. Like I say it this way to the group, I realized what he had done, which is so similar to what he would do internally. He would go through the steps without any of the thinking behind it. Like, what he did was he went to his fellow panelists and said, what's a question you think we might get from the audience? And he wrote them down, but hadn't done the work of thinking through, well, what's my position on this, and how do I articulate it?
Exactly. So it's really very superficial, again, just doing enough for show. Someone just doing Yeah. Wow.
Exactly. So I use that as a warm and confident example.
Yeah.
And I don't think you need examples of each one of these. I don't tend to give an example of cold and confident. Cold and confident, I'm more like define it. Actually, I'll tell you one example I use for cold confident. Sometimes I do. Of the 4 quadrants, I always use the warm and confident example, but I occasionally use this cold confident one, which was a woman I worked with at a pharmaceutical company who was going for a higher role in marketing. And it's very competitive. She actually gets to the final 2. Like, there's 2 people left, her and someone else, and she gets feedback before the next set of interviews. And they said, Pam, we believe you want this job. We believe you can do this job. We're just afraid you're going to leave bodies. And what that says is that, yes, there's no doubt she's confident and will get it done, but at what cost? And at that company, that may be an issue. And so that's the example I may use for cold and confident.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, my husband got, when he first started going for jobs and stuff, he wanted to do so well, and he studied up so hard, and something years and years ago, of course, and struck me, they gave him feedback so he didn't get the job. But he was I know what he did, he was so well prepared that he came across like a robot, and they couldn't feel the warm human person behind it. He was just so focused on process and saying the right thing and doing it. And he was incredibly, but just focused on that, not the fact of this connection and building trust with people and that you're a human, authenticity. You know, he was like a plastic, and they couldn't feel him, you know. And I know that came from him wanting, fear, but again, it always struck me, what an interesting thing, because he needs to let go of trying to be the perfect, and this, I'm thinking out loud, that a perfect leader or boss, instead of hiding behind an image of what you think it is, be the warmth. Be the warmth. It's okay to be warm, because this is what it brings, and the cold doesn't, it keeps people away, whereas inside you may be really a nice person.
Right, absolutely. And we are so worried about not coming across in a powerful way, in a capable way. We do what your husband did. We over-prepare. We sound scripted and robotic, and no one thinks we're authentic. Like, where's the authenticity there? I have to tell you a story. I was with friends on Sunday, and one of their daughters in college in a program we have in Philadelphia, Drexel, which is like a work study. Like, it's 5 years of college, but after freshman year, you're working a majority of the year in a profession that you're interested in, which is great. It's almost like apprenticeships, which is rare in the U.S. But her daughter's such a perfectionist. She's a ballerina. Her schoolwork, everything has to be just so. And so to get these internships, you had to fill out like 30 questions. And one of them was, what are 3 things that you're working on? And, you know, so she would write this down. But her third one, and as we were so happy she did this, because it was like the first one may have been, I forget what her first 2, but they were like the typical things you might be working on, like listening more or not being as perfectionistic or something like that. But the third one was parallel parking. It's parallel parking. Where she submitted, the woman emailed her and said, we're interested in interview. We call you the funny one of the candidates. You're the funny one. Because she's able to, it was such a real and authentic answer. And I was thinking when she told us the story of my cousin who's a doctor now, but she was applying for residencies with infectious disease programs. And sure, you have to write an essay on what made you interested in infectious disease. And it's because it's my mom's sister is her mother. So she goes, I started being interested in infectious disease because of my mom's refrigerator. She always thought expiration dates were just a suggestion.
Great. Yeah.
Like there's something so real about answering in that way, right?
And you know what's also great about this, because actually I'm thinking about my husband as well, because he can sometimes hide behind this facade of, you know, male whatever, but you're just so human, and everyone is human and responds to that. And it's the courage to be your true self. And that's a true leader.
That's right. That's right. That's where we can talk about authenticity. They have to be comfortable with themselves, because it gives people permission to be comfortable with them and be even more comfortable with themselves.
Exactly. And you are, it's almost like, you're just so true. I was just seeing on YouTube this morning, there was some congressman or something in the US, and his little son rushed up on stage. Have you seen that?
Oh, yes. It was Gavin Newsom, who's now the governor of California, actually. He used to be the mayor of San Francisco for years. He's the governor, and his, like, 2-year-old son ran up, and he scooped him up in his arms. It was so sweet.
Can you imagine the type of guys that would just never be acceptable? And I watched him, and I thought, I'm going to watch this. I watched the way he handled it. I watched his body language, and I thought, holy cow, I'd be voting for you, because you are so being yourself. You're showing you can still carry on with your speech. You're loving your son. You're cuddling him. You're being a real human being. Wow. You know, whereas a lot of men would just get that child out of here quick, you know, especially maybe in the old days, not nowadays perhaps. But it was, I thought, yeah, this is what true leaders are they just take, okay, oops, this has happened. We'll just be real. And I think there was not one person in that room who wouldn't have responded to and really saw something, because they're so into their, you know, they keep their image so strong, and it was great to see a real person there. So
absolutely. Absolutely. So with that, one thing I emphasize here is that, and sometimes I use the next slide before this slide, is that they actually can be 2 competing energies. So I think of it like a seesaw. The more warmth you have, like it's be like overly warm, like overly like, hi! And you are then perceived with low confidence. Or the opposite, you can really be all business, all task, and be perceived as too cold.
Yeah.
So, like, how do you get the balance right? And think about the situations, and you can bring it to them. Think about the situations you're in on a daily basis. You know, if you're meeting with customers, internal meetings, phone calls, everyday interactions, how do you need to think about getting that balance right? And then talk about it here. Because it actually, what happens is we overcorrect. We're afraid of not being taken seriously, so we come across as really cold. Or we're afraid of not being liked, and we want to win someone over, and we're like overly warm and overly chatty, and then like people like question our competency. So we need to like read the situations.
Good. Yeah.
I'm going to have the office send you, I'll have Justin, because he has to send you this updated deck anyway, but send you an infographic that we send out after our trainings, articles and studies and different things to help them with transferring the learning back to their job. And one of the things we're going to send to this class is an infographic, and the infographics on warmth and confidence. So I'll have them send it to you so you can look at it, because it aligns with what we're saying.
Great, yeah. And if there's anything I can read and study up just to have a little bit of extra data in my head, I'll study that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Good.
Materials. Can we take like a 1 minute break? I need to get more water.
Yeah, sure. Good idea.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Yeah.
I'm home with Jacinta, but I have water. All right, the next slide, Jacinta, you may not want to use. This is, like most people do leadership presence, I think don't use it. I added it. Can you see the guy with the baseball?
Oh, hang on. Hang on, wait, I'm on the last slide now, I'm a bit confused. Hang on, where are you?
Oh. So
oh, yeah,
you saw, and then you see the guy with the baseball?
Okay, yeah, can you just go back one more? Because I was actually looking at my slide. Well, I didn't go back. So, you know what happened? I clicked on my presentation. So go back, can you go back one more? Backwards, please? Oh, wow.
This?
Yeah, okay. I had that in front of me. Now go forward.
Okay, so you saw the seesaw, the warmth and confidence.
Nice, I like it. Oh, I know. I was looking at the student document. Yep.
Okay.
And then the next slide.
Right. This next slide you might want to take out, especially because it's baseball, and baseball's not big in Europe. But I want to explain what it's about, again, because you don't need to use the slide, but just what's behind it. Usually, somewhere in this section, and again, I sometimes use the seesaw before the matrix, sometimes after, so you can move these things around a little, depending on your transitions and your flow. I usually get asked, is there a difference in warmth and confidence or the perception of warmth and confidence for men or women? And there is a bit of a difference. Is that because there's a default assumption that women are warm and men are confident. And so, like, if we do something that doesn't seem warm as a woman, it is, like, jarring. Sometimes it's called the daddy bonus, mommy penalty. It's known as, where a woman was already seen as warm, so when she's a child, it doesn't really up the warmth. The warmth was already there, but also doesn't help with the perception of competency. But for men who are, again, that default assumption they're confident, we all know men who aren't.
This is how it is,
Right. That when he has a child, there's like, oh my gosh, like he's warm now. Like, oh, he left to coach his daughter's soccer game, or he's involved with his kids' classes. He's, parent, leader of the class. And people, like, it adds the warmth, and that's the daddy bonus. So I'll say to the group, like, let me show you an example of how this perception is different. Every summer in the U.S., there are 100-mile-per-hour fastballs at a baseball game that are hit into the stands, and occasionally there is someone who catches it. He looks something like this. ESPN goes crazy, Twitter goes crazy, because the guy not only caught the ball, but he's still holding the baby. For a man, it's a perfect combination of warmth and confidence, right? Because he's holding the baby, there's the warmth, but he's still the man because he got the ball. When I want to think that the judgment for a woman would be different, if this is a woman who caught the ball but still holding the baby, I think a lot of comments would be, can you believe she didn't go to protect the baby? Like, why is that baby at a game anyway? The baby should be home napping. The baby's going to get sunburned. This kind of judgments for women are often very different than they are for men. So it's just something to be aware of, but you certainly don't have to use this slide. Just know that you may want to do some reading up on this. I will send you some stuff, but you may want to look yourself too about this idea of the difference with men and women. And the other question I get that's not specific to gender is warmth more important than confidence, or vice versa? And Cuddy's research shows that it's more important to lead with warmth and follow with confidence. Most of us don't do that. Where we're joining a new team or a new company or get a new project, we feel like we really have to prove ourselves, so we lead with confidence. But her research is quite clear that actually you want to lead with building connections. The first 30 days on a new job, sitting down with people, getting insights from them, understanding the relationships, understanding how decisions are made, So we lead with warmth and then the competency, because they'll assume competency if you are in that role, at first at least, but they may not assume warmth. The only difference would be in a crisis situation. Like if you're in a ship that's sinking, you know, and you're taking over the ship, you're not leading with warmth. It's like in a crisis, it's competence. So it's a question you might get. So I want you to know that information.
Right. Yeah, no, this is great. It's good to hear what sort of things come up. Good.
Okay, so we're finally out of that first section of leadership presence, so that leadership presence fundamentals. So we go to our first section. We don't spend a ton of time on this, but a bit, about being present. So if you are tracking with the student guide, with the handout on page 7, that's called Be Present, Mindfulness, being in the moment. So I always ask the group the question that's there, which is, what holds us back from being present? Like, if we know it's important, mindfulness has certainly been in the news for a long time about the importance of this. What holds us back from being present? And people talk about technology and how busy they are and health, and sometimes while they're saying this, I'll put this slide up where you know, this guy's an octopus with how much he's pulled in so many directions, and we feel like this. So I just kind of process that with them, and I say, absolutely, we all feel that way, yet there's so many benefits of being present. Here are 3 key ones, and that's in that top box on page 7, where if we are present in the moment, it eases our stress and anxiety. It helps us focus on other people, get out of our own head, and when we focus on other people, they feel valued, important, and motivated. And I might tell a story of a leader who did that, or a politician who makes you feel like you're the most important person. So that's a very intentional thing to do, because they're busy people. But it's like how you made someone feel. And then the third is it also increases our flexibility, our ability to adapt in the moment, and to changing circumstances. And I share a story. Again, you can borrow any of these stories, but also just to help you find your own, I always use a story on flexibility from my friend Julie. So Julie is an owner of a manufacturing company, and it's a large global manufacturing company where they manufacture safety, like lab equipment, goggles and gloves. And it's a very rare position for a woman, especially in the U.S., to be leading in a manufacturing company, very rare. And she'll talk about being at meetings where she is the only female there, besides like the meeting planner. She's the only one. And so this is a few years ago, but she's speaking at a conference. She's of leaders in manufacturing, and she's the only female. She's the after-lunch speaker, and she's 7 months pregnant with her 3rd child, which is important in the story. So I'm having them visualize. She's behind the lectern, but it's like not a well-produced meeting. Like, she's up there trying to get the group's attention, tapping the microphone, clearing her throat, but they're all just talking to each other, and it's not like a lot of well-run meetings where maybe music would be softening or an announcer would welcome people back, right? So she's really struggling to get their attention, but she's so present. She's able to be flexible and agile. So she steps away, and I model this. She steps away from the lectern, and I put my hand out over my belly, like to remind her that she's pregnant, and come around it. And so she comes around from the lectern, and she says, "Gentlemen, I don't have a lot of time," and I point at my stomach. "I don't have a lot of time. You might want to get seated, or we might want to get started." She said, "You've never seen a few hundred men sit down faster."
I love it. I love it. Fantastic story.
You know, it's any example of like how we were able to be like to pivot in the moment, and a lot of times we don't see that. Like I've seen internal trainers at companies who the PowerPoint isn't working and they just kind of fall apart, or they trip over a cord and they keep apologizing for it constantly. Like they can't quite get past it. And the thing, again, about being present is that it helps us focus on other people and be more agile. So it's an important skill, but it's one we continue to work on. So,
that's good. That's nice. I can relate to that. Things falling apart, not working, and I've got 30 young people at year 1s at university sitting there in front of me going, "Ah!" But you're right.
Exactly.
It's about in that moment, adapting, you're looking at them, you're feeling them, and you're just able to shift gear and cope with whatever's coming at you.
Exactly.
Yeah, but if you're not in the present, if you're not in the moment, and then you're thinking, what's getting in the way? You're thinking, well, it's got to be perfect, and it's not how I wanted it, and it's not how I expected. Oh my God, and this stupid thing. Yeah. Whereas if you're really
caught up in that, and we can't like be present for the audience anymore and connect with them because we're so caught up in like, what do they think of me? They didn't think I was prepared, or
That's good. That's good.
Okay, perfect.
That's good because it triggers some little stories. I'm sure in the next couple of days things will pop up. So I'll start gathering little memories of different funny things that happened. Yep. Nice.
So what we briefly go into, again, we don't spend a lot of time on this section. We're really just raising their awareness of the importance of it and a little bit more understanding how to do it. So we talk about there's 3 techniques for being more present, being in your body, and letting your thoughts go and feelings be. But that's really tricky to do. It's easy to say, hard to do. So what I've done the last few months is I have Headspace app on my phone, but it could be Calm, it could be Stop, Breathe, and Think. It could be like even a free app. Like Headspace is kind of pricey, but some of the other apps are free. And I actually take them, I'll have it lined up, before the class, and I take them through a 3-minute, at the most a 5-minute, like depending on my timing that day, meditation. So I have, like, instead of me taking them through it, I'm not a meditation teacher. So I have, like, the Headspace guy walk us through a practice of a 3-minute meditation. And it's worked really nicely in, and it could be something you have on YouTube that you just, toggle out of your PowerPoint and have them, but I keep it no more than 5 minutes, keep it brief, and have them experience that.
And that works nicely, huh? That does the job. Yeah, good.
Yeah. Here, these were 2 big ones for a long time. Again, you don't need to use the slide, but Headspace, Stop, Breathe, and Think. Now Calm has gotten even more popular, so I think I need to add that to the slide. But
what's it called? Calm?
Calm. Yeah, there's all this research on Calm. I don't know why they picked that one specifically to do all this research on, but maybe it's a little less expensive than the other 2. I mean, when I say expensive, Headspace is typically more than $100 a year, so it's pricey.
Wow.
But some of our clients, like Genentech, they can use a company code and they get it for free. So that's why I started emphasizing the ones that they were using.
Yeah,
but I have them experience it. Then there's one more thing we do here, which is kind of different. One of the things that keeps us from being present is that inner critic. That voice is like, again, they're not going to think I'm prepared. I can't believe that happened. That's not how I planned it. Oh, you always mess up. That devil in our head that's so tough on us. And that can keep us from being present. So what we want to do is we do an inner critic exercise here. And you can play with this in a different way. But what I've done is the handout comes in a green folder, like a folder that has like a name 10 and other stuff in it. So inside the green folder, there is 2 blank pieces of paper and an envelope. So at this point in the class, I say, let's open again our green folders and take out the envelope with the 2 blank pieces of paper. And they have no idea why they're doing this. And say, I want you to write down when you're under stress or in a fearful situation, like taking over a project that you're not sure that you can achieve, or leading a new team, or interviewing for a role, something that's really causing you some self-doubt. What are the doubts that come up for you? Like, what is that? What does that say? Now, I let them know, and this is really important, that unlike our team discussions and our parent shares, no one's going to see this. This is just for them. So basically taking this unconscious voice to being conscious and writing it down. So it gives them a few minutes to reflect on that on 1 blank piece of paper. So sometimes they write a few bullets, sometimes they write paragraphs, sometimes they do like a circle with spokes on the wheel, like mind map it. There's no right or wrong, but I just want them to get aware of it. And then they put that to the side for a moment. Again, no one's going to see it, and they take out the second blank piece of paper. And this one is for them to take a much more, like an outside perspective look at that list and say, is that really accurate? Is this truthful. Like, is this the full picture? Because sometimes it's like an old nagging voice. It's like, you're never good at these things, or, you know, you always try, but, you know, it's not good enough. Like, these kind of voices that can be very old. And sometimes I'll say, right, you know, look at it in a more critical eye and say, is that truthful? And say, you know, why is this not all accurate? For some people, it is helpful for them to have an outside voice to this. Like, what if a mentor of yours, a coach that you've had, a teacher or professor, your spouse, a close friend, what if they looked at this list? What would they say? And have them write that down on the second. Because it's basically saying, whoa, you're being way too hard on yourself. Look at all of these successes, and you can do this, or you can surround yourself with people who are knowledgeable in this area. You don't need to be knowledgeable in this area. You can bolster the team, or, you know, just look at this a little differently. And so they spend a few minutes doing that. So the first piece of paper, second piece of paper, and they're all wondering, oh, wait, what am I supposed to do with this? So, and then they start putting both of them in the envelopes if you're waiting too long. So I'm like, wait, for the first piece of paper where you just wrote down what the inner critic's saying about you, I want you to destroy it, actually. I want you to rip it up, crush it, stomp on it. If we could light those things up in here, I would. Just get rid of it.
Great.
So just, you know, kinesthetically have them get rid of it. For the one where, you know, it's looking at it in a more objective way, or it's your mentor or a spouse or a friend saying, like, here's how I see you, that I want you to see again. So we have them put them in envelopes and put them in the middle of the table, and then I collect them at lunch or at a break, and we send them back to them. I don't know how we want to do that internationally. Like, I guess you could send it back to them and invoice us, like for your, you know, postage stamps.
Yeah, we can do something.
And anything, just let us know. But, like, in the U.S., that's how we do it. And it can be like a week or two after the class. It shouldn't be, like, right away. And it's a good reminder for them. So it's like a cognitive behavior therapy exercise in the class, and then it has that, like, follow-up where they get to see this voice, because you know that inner critic has gotten pretty loud again after the class, right?
Lovely. Yeah, and it goes down well, huh? Every time you do it?
Yeah, people seem to love it.
Great, yeah. Great. Good.
All right, so then we go to being connected. Being connected is on page 8.
Empathy.
Yeah, so it's about empathy. So do you have being connected? Yep, on page 8.
Yeah.
So it's about creating connections and enhancing relationships through listening and empathy. Mainly, we added authenticity because it needs to come from an authentic place. So we talk about why is empathy important, hearing from them in terms of building relationships, building trust, you know, all of those things. We discussed that as a group. And, you know, you can talk about it, you know, why is empathy important, what are things that we do to show empathy. Oh, we're compassionate, we provide safety, we reveal our own feelings so they feel safe revealing theirs, you know, talk about all of this. So it's just a group discussion. Then I show this video, which I'm not going to show you now, but you have it in what Justin sent you. It's called "It's Not About the Nail." So the way to set that up is
I might have seen that one. Yeah,
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I know that one. Yeah.
So it's what the point, like the way I set it up, because you can't just show it after you discuss empathy, because it won't make any sense. So basically it talks about why empathy is important. Then I'll go back to gender, and I'll say, well, sometimes people will say women are better at empathy, and men want to problem solve. And, you know, in my experience in business, women are very good at problem solving. It's what we do, and all of us could bolster our ability to empathize. But let's have some fun with the genders. Let's take a look at "It's Not About a Nail." So I set it up in a humorous way so no one's offended with it. So we show the video. And then I have them do an exercise. So before I go, whoops, I'm going to blank it out. Before I go into the 3 guidelines about empathy for leaders, I think I should be on empathy, on empathy for leaders. I put them in an exercise. So I asked them to all think about a situation, personal or professional, that's causing some strong emotion for them, that they could use someone to listen to. And so, you know, they think of that, and then I have them stand up with someone that they haven't paired up with, just 1 round this time. Stand up, have someone you haven't paired up with. Now, the goal for this pair and share is not to solve problems. the goal of this parent share is to listen, to empathize. So let's say you and I were paired up and I said, I'm under a lot of stress with X, and I shared what's going on. So your role is to listen, to say things like, that must be so hard, or you can ask some questions, how are you handling it? And, you must be overwhelmed. Is anyone helping you with this? Like, whatever you would ask is all fine. You can even reveal something that you've gone through that is, it doesn't have to be identical, but you can understand what they're feeling. But we do that not to take over the conversation, but to let them know they're not alone with it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, good. I'm writing. And again, so we're making sure they have to really practice and sort of really stress this empathetic behaviour, and they're not allowed to problem solve. That must be that, like, some people go straight into, oh, I know what you should do. Do you see that in class?
Totally.
That's
yeah. I should have emphasized that here.
No, you've got to listen.
That in class. Yeah, we all go, right, you know what you should do? Have you called? Have you tried? Right, sometimes people just want to be heard, and it's enough for them. And so we talk about that, talk about how do you know when they want empathy or to problem solve it. I'm sure, you're skilled in all this, so you'll know how to facilitate all that.
Yeah, great, but just great to hear it and hear about your experiences. This is good. And okay, I'm visualizing as we're talking, and like, okie, yeah. And then you kind of got to go, no, let's do it again, because it's about really listening, being very present and showing your empathy and not shifting straight into, good. Okay.
Yeah,
so they catch their own pitfalls and say, oh, yeah. I go straight into, oh, I know how to help you mode.
Exactly.
Right.
So that you don't spend as much time on this exercise, like 2-3 minutes on each side. So a partnership could be, let's say, average 5 minutes total, because they're asking questions, they're empathizing, but they really, if they go too long, they're going to go into problem solving, and that's what we don't want them to do. But yeah, then we debrief it. And then we go into these 3 guidelines on empathy for leaders. One is to tune into others. Like, what can happen is we get so busy, or we're leading a bigger and bigger team, and we really lose that connection with what's happening with the broader team. So I'll give you an example.
Are you on the slide? Hang on, I've lost it. No?
Oh, no, there's no, I'm on page 8. I saw the slide blank for this.
No, that's good. Let me just check. Hang on. Where are you? Page 9, page 8. Knowledge.
What do you have page 8? We might have a slightly different version.
Yeah, because I've got the listen, acknowledge, reveal, and then I've got be expressive. Visually.
Yeah, but that's the next page. Above the listen, acknowledge, reveal, above that.
Yeah.
It should say 3 guidelines.
Of course, got it. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, got it. Okay, so the first is tune into others, know what's going on with the group, and, connecting with them. And or if you're a member of the team, know what's going on with people on your team and connect with them. Like, that's really an important thing, but we're talking about from a leadership perspective. But it's also important for an individual. And I'll give you an example. Someone named Kevin, who heads a field medical team, that he jumped 2 levels for this role. It is demanding a ton of travel, just working all the time, and he is a workaholic, so it's okay for him, but it's pretty intense. And because of that, tuning into the team has kind of taken a back seat to, getting a lot of things done. And so as we were working with him to get feedback from the team, doing a 360, it came up that, like, there's a lot of changes that Kevin's leading, because the whole company is making changes, and he's leading the change, but he's so busy that he doesn't understand how this change is impacting us. He isn't taking the time to know what's happening with us, and also is starting to make, like, sarcastic cracks that are not being appreciated that are kind of generational cracks. Like, one of the changes that they're making is when they submit forms, everything has to be done virtually or through e-fax. They can't use fax machines anymore. Well, okay, that doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but a lot of them are like, no, I'm used to faxing. This is, it's just easier for me. I want to do it that way. And so he makes a crack on a conference call like, we're moving to e-fax or to do it all virtually. I mean, really, who uses a fax machine anymore? And you have all these baby boomers who are on the team who are like, he doesn't even, hasn't spent time to even get to know us and our concerns. So he'll just make cracks a lot. So he's losing his connection with the team, and they don't feel like he empathizes with what they're going through. So you could come up with an example like that.
That's a good one. Yeah.
So tuning into others and staying intentional about that, being aware of our own filters. Sometimes someone will say something that will make it very difficult for us to empathize with. So an example, I give a personal example, my friend Amy. So I'm Amy, her name is Amy. She is a stay-at-home mom. She has 3 kids. Our youngest are good friends, our youngest boys. And I get off a red eye a few months ago, and I'm chatting with her later in the day. I'm really exhausted. I was in California working all week. I had flown all night. I was exhausted, and she's sharing with me how tough it's been since her husband's working all the time, and the kids have all made the travel soccer team, so she's like crazy at night getting them to these practices, and she's barely been to the gym or returned the clothes to Nordstrom, and only had one lunch with one of her friends that week. And I was really having trouble being empathetic. I was like, seriously, like in my head. I just got off a red eye. I've been working all week. Like, this is not a big problem. But you know what? And I was triggered because of that, like, stay-at-home mom versus working mom thing. So that's a filter. But I was also triggered because my son didn't make the travel soccer team. So there was also that, like, she didn't mean it that way. She was talking about the logistics, but it was a filter for me. I couldn't get past it. And so it was my awareness of that helped me, like, take a breath and be able to be empathetic for her. And I think that happens for our clients. Like, one person gets a role internally, like, oh, you get to be on this brand that's launching. Someone else didn't get that opportunity, and then months later they see each other in the cafeteria, and the person's venting about how hard they're working. And the other person who didn't get the job, it's like a filter for them. They're triggered by it because it's like, well, you wanted the job, and you took that opportunity, and I didn't get it.
These are good. Yeah, that's great.
And then we talk about knowing how and when to use empathetic toughness. It's a term I coined, but sometimes
I like it.
Empathy can go too far, where it's like, I'm working with a leader who's like constantly supporting our team and leading through this change, and for months has been, how can I support you? I'm here. Yes, we'll have more one-on-ones. Yes, we'll have more calls, we'll have more touch points. Yes, I'll take on more because I know you're still adjusting. And empathy, like, are you getting more comfortable with the change? I finally looked, and this is based on a real person, I looked at her name's Michelle, and said, Michelle, at what point are they going to be accountable? Like, it's time, it's been months that you're supporting this individual through this change. At a certain point, you have to go to them and say, I know you're sad about what isn't anymore, who on the team we've lost, the shift in priorities, the shift in certain things. I know this change has been hard. We have been able to take many of your suggestions and be able to influence on them, and I think that there's been a lot of wins from that, but I still see that you're swirling in what isn't. And what I need to ask you at this point is, are you on the bus or not? Are you in, or is this not going to work for you? Basically, our role is not to save these people. They have to save themselves. If they cannot adapt to this, then they should look for other opportunities, and we'll support them in that.
And sometimes, that's really good. I love the phrase, or the term. It's wonderful because that's what we could do too much sometimes. Maybe women being empathetic and kind at work. I've seen it recently, and at this university, that there's almost a payoff for staying stuck because they're getting all this wonderful love and attention from this wonderful boss, but it's like, no, now it's enough, and now you've got to, get out of it, like snap out of it. We've helped you sort of go through the grieving process of saying goodbye to the old way. You've now got to adapt to the new way, and now it's enough already. And you're not helping them grow. You're helping each other get stuck in this dynamic of because it's nice. It's nice to have your boss give you extra attention, or you can get stuck. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
So
it's like you've got to learn like a pattern of it.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, be tough, and it's your role to grow them. And again, by saying empathetic toughness, you're not being a horrible boss or anything. You're being strong and firm, and you're guiding them in a correct way, so they grow and blossom. Or as you say, the changes were so dramatic, they're not on the bus anymore. And then it's like, well, time to move off, which is good. Yeah.
Exactly. So it gives them, like, sometimes when you coin a phrase, it gives them something to remember or anchor to like that, and it's important. Okay, so the next section, I'm kind of thinking I'm putting on hold, because this next section, which is on being expressive, let me come back here, is it overlaps so strongly with delivery skills and presentation skills, which we're going to go over later. So let me just talk to you about how I set this up, and then when we go through presentation skills, I think it'll cover both.
Okay.
Okay. I'll like high level it here. I'm not going to go into the level of detail, but I'll high level of it and then go into the detail when we do presentation skills.
Yeah.
Okay, so we introduced the concept of being expressive. What we're talking about is how we come across visually, vocally, and verbally. And this is so important because of mirror neurons.
Yep.
I don't know if the group will be familiar with mirror neurons, so we tell them mirror neurons is that we instinctively look for and judge facial expressions and behavior cues and unconsciously mirror them. We do this all the time. So because of that, emotions are contagious. Facial gestures and their underlying emotions, which could be positive or negative, right, a smile, a frown, an eye roll, are highly infectious. So if I'm in front of the room, I'm training, and I look excited, the group will get a little bit more energized. If I look confident, they'll relax, actually, and feel like they're in good hands. But if I look like I'm having a root canal, the group will feel as if they're having a root canal. We're mirroring each other's energy all the time. It's also why one person yawns and it actually goes viral, someone else yawns. That's part of mirror neurons. And sometimes we don't realize, I'm going to blank it out here, our own power with this. We have a lot of power of how we make people feel when we're running a meeting, when we're speaking up on a call, when we're leading a team, when we're presenting. It's like, what do I want them to feel about what I'm saying, about this idea or this project or this contract? And how do I express that visually, vocally, and verbally so they get that message strongly? And a lot of times we're not even aware of that. So like example I give them is I'm on a flight to Dallas recently, and I said, when you're on an airplane, who do you look for to know you're safe if the flight gets really turbulent, like it's really bumpy? They're like, oh, the flight attendants. Absolutely. So I'm on this flight to Dallas, and it gets very turbulent. Like we're dropping, we're all over the place, drinks are starting to spill, like it was bad. And I'm like, whoa. I take my earbuds out, and I'm trying to hold my drink, and I see the flight attendants are like quickly trying to move the drink cart back. And I overhear them saying, do you smell something burning?
Oh, no.
I know. Like completely had a panic attack hearing this. And I said, I'm sharing this with you because they're not aware of their own power in that situation. And everyone is looking at them to see how they should react. Who is looking at you to see how they should react? And are you aware and intentional in the use of that power?
Yes. Right.
And I probably do that a little bit more in this class than I do in presentation skills, but then we get into this idea of the 3 V's. So this slide, you'll see again in presentation skills. You probably already have since you've done it for us. So the visual is what people see. The vocal is what they hear in our voice. And the verbal is the language that we use. So I say we're going to give you some tips, And this is important in framing it up well in leadership presence versus presentation skills. In presentation skills, it's all about presenting, informally or formally. Here, I want them to think about how they're coming across, even one-on-one. I mean, this is not a presentation skills class. So it's like, how do you come across your facial expressions? And we, I'm jumping past this, there's a video here, which is from Angela Rye at CNN, which is great, which she heard something from at the Republican National Convention that made her eye roll, and her eye roll went totally viral. So we talk about congruent facial expressions, congruent being like congruent to the message you're trying to send.
Yeah.
That, you know, if you're sharing bad news, you shouldn't be smiling. But on the other hand, like, what do you want to communicate? We talk about eye contact at meetings, one-on-one. I'm going to show you the exercises I do around this in presentation skills, and we, you know, talk next, but it's the same thing. Confident posture, deliberate movement. We go into the presentation skills stuff here, so that'll overlap with presentation skills. Purposeful gestures, I show them the video from Talladega Nights. So you should look at all these videos. They'll be in presentation skills again. He doesn't know what to do with his hands. It's just a really funny video. So you're talking about best practices. Yeah, do you see it? You can look at that.
Okay, yep.
When you watch this, it's going to get funnier.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Why you keep touching the microphone?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. That is, this is great, yeah. And you don't even realize you're doing it, right?
Right, no, it's not aware at all. And so we talk about, like, what do we do with our hands when we're not sure what to do with them or when we're nervous. But I'll go through all that content with you, like, again, when we go over the presentation skills stuff, because it's the same. So we're talking about, you know, gestures even at meetings. This is for everyday interactions, not just formal presentations. So, like, although the content is the same, I frame it up differently in presentation skills.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we talk about dress here more than I do in presentation skills, because saying that everything communicates, and dress can, you know, can be an image killer for us. So when I think about how do I want to come across, I say, look, dress is not deep, but it's highly observable. So do I look like a leader within this tribe, within this corporate environment? What does that look like? And I give them some examples here of when things, you might not want to use them, but when someone went wrong with it. President Obama is this famous, he never made mistakes with dress, but this one time he wore this beige suit, but it was talk about Middle East policy and ISIS, and it just seemed so casual and like summer wedding compared to like a serious policy speech. So these are some of the tweets. This is when Tim Cook brought someone on stage when he was introducing the iWatch and the, I think, iPhone 7 at the time, and the guy looks like, at least for an American audience, like it looks ridiculous, like, you know, forget the new iWatch, I want the new iScarf. That's very distracting. Hold on. Sorry. So you can choose to use them or not. It's just funny examples. This is Megyn Kelly. When she was still on Fox News, and it looks like she's on spring break. It doesn't look like she is a serious news reporter.
Yeah, exactly. This is good.
We talk about like thinking about how we want to come across. So that's visual. Again, I'll get into more detail in the presentation skills section of it. We briefly go into vocal. I don't know, again, if you would use this slide. I don't know how popular this movie was in Europe, but this was years and years ago in the 80s, like a very popular movie that is still like kind of a legendary movie here, which is Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So like anytime I show this, how do I sound? Like everyone laughs because they remember he's a teacher in it that is doing roll call, like, you know, who's here next, who's next, and he's saying Bueller, anyone. If the audience doesn't know this, just take it out. You could just have a blank slide that says vocal, how do I sound? And so I'm not going to get into.
Maybe there's something else that I can think of. Yeah.
If you might have like a news announcer or someone famous in Holland or on Euro TV that they would think about, like who would be over-exaggerated with their voice or really flat with their voice. That would be the example you would use here.
Yeah. Over-exaggerated or flat, yeah.
And also, like, if you want to change these slides, if you tell Justin, all right, I want to use this person, he can create the slide for you. You don't need to do it. Yeah, so you just tell him what you're looking for. Yeah. I'm not going to go through all the vocal tips and tricks because I'm going to do that around the presentation skills. It's going to be the same, so we're going to skip that. These are videos. I'll go over that in presentation skills. Then we get into like the verbal piece, which is here. Sorry. So this is a vocal video, verbal. Okay. So this tracks along with on page 10. Well, verbal. Your words matter. You want to think about. Do we overuse hedging language and qualifiers? So being smart about hedging language and qualifiers. Things like think, might, maybe, hopefully. You know, I think what I'm trying to say, and you're like, whoa, you've been here all day. You're only thinking, you're only trying. So those are like unnecessary hedges that they may not even be aware of, but it undermines their credibility and their presence.
Yeah.
Also, be smart about when to use acronyms and jargon, and I would ask CSL Behring, what are some of the internal acronyms that are used here? And they'll, you know, they may say, I haven't worked with them yet either, but in other companies I hear COAM, BSA, RAM, NFM, NSM, like and I said, look, it's okay to use those terms if everyone knows what you're sharing. It's just very confusing when you're using terminology that an audience doesn't know. I will tell you as a consultant, and I always tell them this, I always try to pick up the language of the company and use it, because then it not only shows that I've done research on the company, it builds trust. So I start, you know, at Genentech, trying to understand their language. If I worked with BI, their language. If it was Microsoft, their language, pick it up. So it's not saying avoid using acronyms and jargon. It's saying be smart about the use of them. And then to avoid tag questions. Tag questions are rhetorical questions, but not like good rhetorical questions that you want the audience to think about. It's just like at the end of a sentence as a filler, like, okay, you know, would I, right? Yeah, exactly.
No, I used to teach English, and I remember teaching tag questions, and I'm thinking, I don't think the Dutch do it, and I'm wondering if the Germans do. Is it an international group, or is it mostly Germans?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. That's a great question for Heather. I know I lived in England, and in England they definitely do tag questions. I'm not sure about Holland or Germany.
We do it in Australia dreadfully, and in English, and in England, of course, we do it. It's part of our sort of English culture. But I wonder what the Germans do. But again, it depends how international they are.
Yeah, so when you find out, and then Heather might have to find out from the client, that might be something you take out, because I wouldn't want it not to relate to them. But the ums and the ahs, which is more vocal, again, we'll talk about that in the presentation skills part, that is international. I mean, you could be in Ireland, you could be in Morocco. Everyone has their type of filler that they do, so that would be universal. So we show this great video then next that I'll let you watch on your own about something that's not on here, but I need to add it, which is, so I just verbally announce it basically, the overuse of catchphrases.
Oh, yeah.
Catchphrases, and there's specific American ones shown here, so I don't know if the video completely relates. You'll have to watch it. But like where the rubber meets the road, I'm going to get granular, I'm going to take a 30,000-foot view, don't beat around the bush, kind of these colloquial expressions. So it might be funny because they're working with in English, so they hear them enough, and they can talk about like what are some of those catchphrases that they hear a lot in Europe. But it's a very funny video to watch, so take a look at that. Okay, so then we go into one other thing in this section, which is about, we've looked at how you communicate visually, vocally, verbally. We've ended with the overuse of catchphrases on this video, and then we say, also important verbally is how we answer questions. I mean, most of the time when we're showing up, well or not, it's because we're pitching an idea or we're answering a question. Many of them are our perspective questions, point of view. We want to show you how to do that well without having infobesity. You know, that's like sharing way too much information.
Yeah.
Infobesity. I'm going to skip past this video because I don't think you should use it there. So when Justin resends you the video, I'm going to slightly tweak this. This is the model then. Take a position. It's on page 11. Take a position. Prep. It's called prep. So point of view or position, reason, example, explanation, or evidence. By the way, it could be evidence, and position. Before I explain this, you've seen this before?
No, I haven't. I can imagine what you're saying,
Okay, great. So prep is a really good framework for being clear, concise, but still compelling. And it's good for like both left brain and right brain people because it's linear, right? It's like step by step by step. For the linear people, it has a process, but it has enough interesting information, color commentary in the example explanation piece. So if you said to me, here, well, I'll just have you throw me a point of view question. Why don't you ask me a point of view question? I'll model it.
Oh, I'm going to freeze up. I can't.
Yes, you can. Oh, by the way, and I have the group do this too, but in the U.S., because things have just become so, I don't know, politicized and divided here, I put like a caveat. I said, I want someone in here to ask me a question, but when you ask me a question, and in a few minutes when you ask each other a question, they cannot be political, social questions. It's not about guns. It's not about building a wall. Like, I'm very specific about it because people will go there. Like, what's your stance on abortion? I'm like, really? You're going to do that? Like, we can't do that in the U.S. I think things are way more progressive in Holland. But anyway,
but I don't know. But still, it can get. Again, things have shifted over here as well. But I'm thinking, and in fact, you could ask. They could use examples from work. You know, what do you think about? What's your position on the new rollout of how we're marketing our new product or something?
Exactly. But and you could give them an example of that. But if it's a diverse group where they might not know the type of projects they're working on, it'll be harder for them to do work-specific questions. So it could be like things like, what do you think about our vacation that's offered within the company? Do you think it's fair or should be increased? You know, it can be work-related that isn't specific to the work they're doing. If it's an intact group, then it's way easier. Like, do you think we should have more flexible contracting to be more competitive? You know, that would make a lot of sense for an intact sales team.
Anyway, so when you find out, you let me know how, or we can have a quick chat on as well about it.
I would go back to Heather and ask those questions. So I think that's really important.
So get back to us with that.
So let's say you threw me the question, thinking.
I'm going straight to all the questions I can't ask you, you know. So, what do you think about developing Brody out into Europe? Come on, guys. You've got a great product. It's a great thing. It's great use. What do you think about that?
I think it's a great idea to broaden Brody's reach in Europe and potentially in Asia and other parts of the world. And the reason is these type of communication and leadership skills are universally needed. Like it's not specific to the U.S. People need these skills to present more effectively, to negotiate, to collaborate, to write effectively, to influence with and without authority. And there are great companies doing this in Europe and across the world. And yet, because Brody has more than 30 years of experience in this, I think there's a lot of potential for us. So, for example, when Andrea was here, she really did a lot to build out our reach, again, often with a company that we did work with in the U.S., like Cognizant or BMS or Roche, but broadening our reach so that we would be able to do a program not just in Syracuse, New York, but in Singapore as well. I think that we need to think about how to tap into those markets, because really our only way we've done that is by currently having clients that wanted to do work internationally. So just one example of that is with Roche. there was certain training we were doing at Genentech in the U.S. that they said we learned about from our counterparts that moved to Roche Global in Basel, and we want to take advantage of some of this training that's not offered, and we've heard such great feedback. So we have to think about how to broaden our reach in a more strategic, like less reactive way, because I think these are skills that everyone can learn and develop on.
Great. Nice. I'm following the position, reason. Great. Yeah. Excellent.
It was a little long. I probably gave 2 examples there, so I should have made that more concise, but it's good enough. It's good enough. So I'll do that. I'll have someone in the group throw a question out to me, model it for them, and then I have them at their tables practice it. Now you can do it. If you have a lack of time, do it in pairs, and just, each person asks the other person a question, they give each other feedback. If you have a little more time, do it at tables, so they have to practice presenting to a larger group, 4, 5, 6 people at the table, practicing eye contact and gesturing. They're like presenting a little bit more, and they get feedback from a larger group. So either do it in a pair or do it for the tables. But people love this strategy, and this comes from our 2-day presentation skills class. It's not typically in our 1-day, but in our 2-day.
Okay. Yeah, so then in pairs or groups, yeah. It's a good one, actually, because, it makes you think before you start going blah, 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 when someone throws you at, think, hang on, what's my position? What is the reason I'm saying that? What's an example to show or evidence to show why I'm saying that? And then sort of wrap it up with your position again.
Okay, yep,
Is that what you're saying? So, yeah, and keeping it clean.
Exactly. Clear, concise, compelling.
Yeah.
So there's only one more section in the class, so hopefully we can then wrap it up because I know it's a lot. Okay, so we went through prep, and then the last section, that last part of that, journey from the beginning is being, being inspirational. So that's on the top of page 12.
Yep.
And being inspirational, knowing yourself and your values. So being willing to share your values and the importance of self-reflection is kind of this section. So we start by saying, and by the way, I don't always have time for this section. If there's a lot of questions that day and there's a lot, everything else you did can be a 1-day program. If you, yes, it's a lot of content. So I don't always get to this. If I'm really disciplined with my time, I will get to it. If I have a day and a half, of course, that's like the part 2. But I'm just letting you know sometimes it's tough to do all of it, and you have to figure out how to tighten it a little bit.
And also it depends how talkative the group is, isn't it? And sometimes
exactly, and how like lunches and all of that. So we talk about the power of stories. That stories really are a powerful way to communicate and influence others. And that leaders need to be storytellers. There's reasons that stories are so powerful. Stories can change the way we think, and this is not like in the handout, this is just background information. There is going to be space for them to write some notes down, but just for, it's kind of their background information here. Stories can change the way we think, we act, and we feel. In fact, in the book Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath, they found that after a presentation, 63% of attendees remember stories, and yet only 5% remember statistics. So it's really important that we all get better at this skill of storytelling. So stories are sticky. Here are some reasons why, and for I would have the participants write bullets down. Do you see where there's some space for them to write down on page 12?
Yeah, let me check again. Yes.
Okay, so stories are sticky, but they're not just sticky. They also lower defenses.
Okay.
Wait, let me just check something out for a second. Okay, yeah, so they're going to write down stories are sticky is the first bullet. Okay, so stories are sticky. But they're not just sticky. Here are 3 additional reasons that stories are so powerful for you to write down. So they lower defenses. So it's like if people are in all-day meetings or another webinar or conference call, it's like they're in information overload, that info beam state, poof, their heads are blowing up. There's too much information. And so it becomes really important for us to like knock down those intellectual defenses that are up because they can't absorb any more material. And stories, because our brains are wired for story, do that.
Yeah.
As soon as people start hearing a story, they put down those mental blocks, those intellectual defenses, and they start listening. So they lower defenses. They also encourage co-creation and ownership.
Okay.
So co-creation and ownership is the fact that when you share a story, people visualize it. So they're co-creating with you, and thus they take ownership, which is similar to if you've read a book that's become a movie. Like, you have created theater of the mind, right? You've pictured those characters, you've pictured these places, and then when it is put on screen, it either aligns with what you pictured in your own world, or it doesn't. But the important part of that is that you co-created with it and you took ownership of that world, and that's what we want people to do with these messages. We want them to be remembered and repeated. Well, how do you do that if they don't have ownership?
Good, yeah. Yeah.
And then it also creates something called a near experience. So
a near experience.
Near experience. What's a near experience? Well, stories, it turns out, are only second to an actual experience. If we tell a story of something happening, it's almost as if it happened to us, or we hear a story about it. We feel that. Take a look at Anne Murphy Paul, what she wrote in Your Brain on Fiction. So I give them time to read this, so take a moment to read it yourself.
Yeah. Or one way to frame your story, you said, yeah.
Yes, so the brain, so I always give them time to read the slides as well. So the brain, it seems, doesn't actually put much of a distinction between hearing about an experience and actually experiencing it yourself. The same neurological regions are stimulated, which is so powerful. So I let them read this themselves. Well, these are the parts of the brain that are lit up when you hear this.
Hang on, where are you reading? You're on a slide now.
Yeah, are you? Oh, I've been on the slide.
I haven't. Oh, sorry. You know what? I'm naughty.
Where are you?
Yeah, I was on this. I should have two windows open, and I don't. Stories are sticky. Go. Yeah, go. Click forward.
So are they? The lower defenses, co-creation, ownership, well, all of that near experience. Stories are only second to actual experience. I let them read this, and here, so like I grabbed his wrist and pulled him back, picturing that actually lights up the motor cortex. His handshake was really gross. It was moist and limp. Oh, the somatosensory cortex. So it actually lights up the same part of the brain as if we've experienced it. So it creates a near experience as if we've experienced it ourselves.
Hey, I was watching a talk on YouTube just the other week, and someone was doing something, she was talking about how thoughts create, a similar line. And she said, think of a lemon. And then this would fit here as well. You think of a lemon and she starts talking about a lemon, and before you know it, you're actually producing saliva as though you're about to eat a lemon.
Oh my God. So, yeah, that would be such a great thing to put in here.
Yeah, so this isn't, so she would go, so okay, everybody, just imagine that nice yellow lemon, and and look at it, smell it, and she, brings it all up. Now, imagine yourself cutting that lemon, cut it. Oh, that spits out, and you put it in your mouth. I'm getting a wet mouth, just, saliva's producing just at the thought of that. So that would be a good little, get them to do right here this minute.
Absolutely. That's really powerful. Yeah.
Seeing how their body is reacting. So this is really, it's going right back to your thing. It's only second to actually being in the experience. So I like, this is really co-creation and ownership, near experience. So they're two really new ones for me. That's
awesome. So we're educating them on why stories are so powerful in this vivid way. The goal here, though, is to have them actually share stories. So we're going to do that by, instead of just like tell a story, which we could do here, but what I was trying to do is also bring in this idea that leaders need to know what's important to them, what's their line in the sand, what are their values, and combine that with sharing a value through story. So after we talk about why stories are important, I talk about, okay, the importance of knowing your values, which is part of like a follow-up information we send to them too. Yeah. And I give them time to read page 13, which is a list of sample values. Acceptance, passion, perseverance, self-reliance, truthfulness, like whatever those things are. And I say take some time to circle the ones that really stand out for you, that you feel are like really important to who you are. And then I have them pick one of those values that they're going to share in story form. And they really have both page 12 and 13 open here, because the one way to frame the story, which is originally from the Ariel group, is the model I use here. So do you see where it says one way to frame the story?
Is this up? Oh, sorry, up the top. I'm just wondering why I can't get two screens going. Wait.
This is on page 12.
Yeah, and I know, I actually know all this stuff. I've done a bit of this stuff myself with, you know, teaching presentation skills and stuff like this. So this is great. Yep, wonderful.
Okay, well, you'll see on page 12, it's one way to frame your story. So one value I have is perseverance. And one value that I operate from most situations is perseverance, and talk about very briefly why that's important to you. And then they have to share a personal story as why this is important or how it came about. So what is something that's happened in their far past or recent past, or it could be a family trait, like something that, you know, my great-grandfather came here as a 14-year-old with no English from Ukraine and built a manufacturing company and supported his entire family. This was an immigrant with not one word of English at 14 years old and really built an empire. Talk about like someone in your family, something that has really resonated with you, but has to be a personal story about this value. The story illustrates, and then you link it back to the teaching points that you're making or to business, and you wrap it up. So I actually have them practice this at tables, or if you have time, you can have each person practice it, you know, sitting at their table to the whole room or standing in front of everyone telling it, but it could be a timing issue. You could also just have your people paired up and doing it, but it's pretty cool to do. So
that is wonderful, because actually, this is a really good way of helping, getting them to structure it, and again, and because the other thing is, I was thinking, I had someone in Singapore, one of the present speakers, and he says, I'm always collecting ideas and stories and building stories so that I've got one to pull out of my hat whenever the situation arises. And I suppose that's what leaders do, you know, and and have metaphors and different things, so to kind of encourage them to start gathering stories and thinking about stories and messages and how they can link it across.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we teach in our storytelling class, and I mentioned it here, is that to be aware of those things, like to be aware of what's happening so you could share it again, a story that you're hearing, because you can borrow other people's stories. They don't always have to come from your direct experience. I mean, you don't claim that someone else's story is yours, but you could say a story I heard recently, or my colleague shared the story with me, and then having a story repository to capture it all. So every professional speaker at NSA, I know, either as a journal or like on their phone or tablet in the notes section, and they have story lists. And they don't like categorize them. It's not like leading through change story or moving to a new country story. They're stories that you can repurpose for different situations, the moral of the story. And so you just capture it in a few words. And I, at this point, have pages and pages in my notes section of stories, because I've been, I heard that at NSA and I started doing it. It's very helpful.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been out of practice, and it's like, but I went through my presentation skills binder folder recently, and I'm like, oh, that's right. I'd forgotten all about these fantastic stories to illustrate, and I'd completely forgotten. So it's good to record, or, keep a way of reminding yourself and refreshing, and a good leader would have these, because I like this. This is the thing, helping teach. Yeah, sorry, I'm thinking about, getting them to realize this is part of that presence, that suddenly you can tell a story to help get everyone on board. We can suddenly, you're feeling like people are worried about something, we can suddenly tell a story, and having these at the tip of your fingers and knowing telling a story will have a better impact and influence people more than just saying, come on, we've got to get on with it, or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Developing your skill in this is so very important.
So after they practice it, I just wrap up with a quote that I love from Brene Brown, which is, remember that stories are data with soul. Because some of these people might be very scientifically based,
Yeah.
and not be uncomfortable with stories. It's anecdotal, it's not proof, it's not scientifically based evidence, but stories are really data. They are data points with soul. There's something extra to it. And then I just review the class, like what they learned, and I usually at that point want to hear from them their key takeaways, and I do that different ways. My favorite way, unless the group is really big, is I have everyone stand up, and I always bring like a very soft, like squishy ball, and then have them share like what's one takeaway each of them have, like 10, 12, 14 people, you can do that. Any bigger, I would probably just have one person at each table stand up and then have them share it. That's my favorite way of bringing it together. So that's the class.
Fantastic. Yeah, I was sort of thinking, executive presence, and thinking about, oh, what is that? And I was curious about how we're going to bring it across. This looks great. Wonderful.
Can we can we look at calendars to see when we can talk about the presentation skills part? Because I appreciate you're speaking this late. Like, what time is it there? Are you 6 hours ahead?
It's 7 o'clock at night, so I'll have dinner when we're done. And
okay,
started at 5. That's good.
What are some days that are good for you coming up?
I'm looking, hang on, so 1, 2, and presentation skills, as I said, I've done it for Brody before. I've done it a lot myself. So we've got 1.
So I don't think we have to go through it in this level of detail. I'll set at an hour. We may not need it, but just to go over, like.
Just 2 hours, and we'll see if we're entering. But next week, Monday, I can do Monday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week.
Let's do Thursday, the 17th. Same time?
Yep. What time is it there?
Well, we start at 11 a.m. Eastern time, so 5 p.m. your time, because it's almost 7 your time now.
Yeah, and if I can start earlier if you want to. I've got nothing
okay.
yet.
Yeah, do you want to do, let's do 10 Eastern time, so 4 your time?
Fantastic.
I'll have the office send an invite on that one, too.
Yeah, that was really handy. Great.
All right. Well, you're going to have dinner. I'm going to have lunch. This is so nice to meet you and get to know each other. Oh, I guess I told you I would undo my screen. Let me figure out. So we can see each other. Let me go back. Where is the WebEx part? Because I've been sharing my screen, but now I don't know where the WebEx. Oh, wait, here. Maybe I go here. How do I? I used to know WebEx so well, and they changed it. And now how do I?
I'm just thinking, where's my video?
All right, wait. I want to stop sharing.
I forgot I was on your screen.
Yeah, you're totally on my screen, and I can't. If I go, let's say if I open this.
There should be a non-screen button.
Yeah, but it's not letting me. I'm sure it's something very basic I'm missing. I think I'm going to ask Justin because I'll waste time. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to ask him to take a look. Slide deck is not the latest that Janice and I have been using, so I share my screen on that one, but now I can't figure out sharing your screen. I don't need to share, so stop sharing. All right, I can do that. And now how do I, because
where's my video?
Now, where's my?
Oh, hang on. Hey, there I am. Can you see me?
Yes.
Start my video.
Oh, start my video, and I can't see her yet. Oh, there.
There I am.
I see Jacinta.
Hi.
Hi. There. Oh, wait. Hold on. We're trying to.
And then this middle one.
Middle. Oh, this is day.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh, I see her, and you can see me. Hi.
Yay! I can see a tiny one of me. All right. Welcome to Holland. Welcome to my office, my home office. Yay!
How did you get to move from Singapore to Holland? Like, why Holland?
I'm married to a Dutch guy.
Oh. Did you marry him in Singapore?
No, I didn't. No, I've lived here for a long time. I think since 1990, and we moved to Singapore for a few years as part of his job. And I thought it would be great to have him. He was keen to have an international experience, so I was in Singapore, and that's where I met Shirley, and did some things. I've even done a couple of webinars for Brodie, and Cognizant. I did some Cognizant training with Brodie, so it was great. But now we've got to bring all these things here.
Oh, that's great. Did you like living in Singapore?
I didn't, because I don't like hot weather.
I hear it's so hot there.
All the time, and always the temperature's always the same. And at the moment it's winter here, and okay, it's a bit gloomy, but I love all the seasons.
Oh, so
and
it's always hot, like all year there, the same? Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah,
you never,
I don't love that either.
Never wear jackets. It's just bizarre. And I miss the changing of the seasons, and also I really like old world. Being Aussie, I really love old things. So Singapore is modern and all of that. So, but it was fantastic experience, like really great. They have great standards. Like, look, honestly, the people there I met were wonderful, and I'm so grateful.
The food is probably amazing.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, lovely, and lifestyle's great. But I'm a bit of an old world sort of girl, and I love Europe. And you're driving, and in a couple of hours, you're in a totally different country with different culture. And in Australia, everywhere you go, there's just Aussies, So
I love that about Europe too. We this summer, my husband and I went to Prague, Budapest, and Vienna. And I lived in London for a year. I've traveled in Europe multiple times, but it was so cool to be like, okay, now we're leaving Hungary, taking a train, just like not even a long train, to Vienna, and then we drove to Czech Republic, and I was like, and everything's so beautiful. Like, I love it. Yeah.
And it's so different. I'm thinking Holland to Belgium. They're only 2 hours or so. How can you can hear the architecture changes? Like, how is it? And then in our countries, even though there's a lot of differences in America, of course, I feel like it's almost like separate countries, the culture in each state.
It's not that different. The accents and there's little cultural stuff, but like, no, it's the same. Everyone has Walmarts. Everyone has
exactly.
Best and Beyond loads. It all looks the same, which I imagine Australia, is it similar? Like, it's all right.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we're miles apart. You can fly for hours and hours, and there's still silly Aussies over there, and there's nothing different. And it's still, even after 20 or 30 years, it's still gets your heart racing. Oh my God, I'm driving to Paris. My God.
It's so amazing.
And so that's, my husband wants to go and live in Australia, but I think he's got to drag me out of here screaming and yelling, because I love all this.
I was going to say, you were very flexible moving to Singapore. Maybe you can stay put for a while.
No, we're staying here in this house, and I'm just getting my business going again, so I don't want to have to move in. No, it's wonderful here. So anyway, Amy, a joy to meet you. Thank you very much.
You too.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you next Thursday.
Yep, got it in. Looking forward to it. And and it's great to have all these ideas and share ideas. And if I think of anything, I'll try anything, and I'll feed it back to you. And yeah, it's fun.
Sounds good. Okay.
Okay. Have a lovely day. I'll
Bye.
go off and have dinner. Bye.
You too.
No, how lovely it is.